Hey everyone. Well, I hope the last few days for you and those who you may have been with have enjoyed Christmas, and that it was better than you maybe expected leading into the Christmas season. So this morning, it's going to be a little different. We got talking, the tech teams and the musicians and the teachers, and we said, man, it would be really nice if we could take this week off and not have to all come in and do everything we normally do on a Sunday. And so we got busy prior to Christmas and began recording everything that you're about to see or listen to. So thanks to technology, actually, while you're at home watching this or listening to this or wherever you might be, I too am at home, likely in my bed, perhaps even in my skivvies, grabbing my coffee, and I'm going to watch this along with all of you too. This is going to be so great. It's taped. It's not live, but we're really hopeful that this service, the music, everything that's said and done, will inspire you, will invigorate you in some way. So we miss you. We wish we could all be together, but we know, right? We know that time is coming. And so until then, we're doing this. So regardless of where you are, what you're doing, our hope for you is that you will lean in. Grab your coffee, sure. Lean in, though. You didn't get up. You didn't turn on this podcast to kind of half listen and do whatever else you're doing. No, you're here to be able to inspire your journey, to be able to take something away, to listen, to learn, to experience something deeper and wider. That's our prayer for you. So wherever you are, may you do that this morning. Enjoy. And look at, I don't know if you say Merry Christmas or Happy New Year at this time in the thing, but we'll go with both. We'll see you soon.
Hello, Friends Church. This is usually the part of the service that we call charitable giving, where I remind you of all the ways that you can financially support Friends Church, which is an organization that relies entirely on the generosity of its members. Today, however, I want to use this time to express my and the rest of Friends Church extreme gratitude to you. I'm so tired of hearing the word unprecedented when it comes to 2020, but there is really no better word. When we put the call out early last spring, knowing that there would be tough financial times ahead, and asking for those folks that were able to consider whether they could donate just a little bit more to give us some breathing room to see ourselves through the pandemic, you came through with flying colors. Together, as a collective, there was not just financial support, but volunteer support that we'd never even contemplated before. I am delighted to share that we leave 2020 on solid financial footing, and we are well positioned to continue into 2021. We are so excited to see the start of 2021 and the promise of welcoming you all back to a full congregation with hugs and handshakes, but not quite yet. We can see the finish line, and we know that it is the support of all of you that gets us to this place. Many thanks, happy holidays, and we'll see you in 2021.
Well, hey folks, I'm really glad you could tune in to our pre-recorded service. Whether it's by live stream or podcast, you just have to know that we're glad you're finding value in what we're doing here. I've been reflecting over the past year's ministry and thinking about all the different things that we've said and done as a church community, the things that we've done together, and all the different conversations and feedback, everything that we've kind of accumulated over the past year and what we had hoped to achieve. Man, there's just been so many different things that have been rolling through my head, but been thinking about it all as I've been preparing for this message, thinking about what I want to say. This is weird. It's always a tricky time of year. People have done Christmas. Now they're thinking about New Year's. We're all in kind of different places, and I'm sure this year is even weirder, right? As I began focusing on a number of different themes, I just kept coming back to one of the things that we've been endeavoring to build, hoping to produce in the lives of our community, like since almost the beginning. It's kind of like stuff we talk about behind closed doors, we really believe in. But, the more I think about it, we don't really talk a ton about it as a whole. And I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to talk about it this morning, or this evening, I guess it is for me right now, but hopefully it'll be this morning when you hear this. Yeah, I'm hoping it resonates with you. It makes sense to what we're really hoping to achieve in the lives of our community, in our own lives. I was in grade 10 when my family and we moved to Central Alberta, to a small town. It's called Veteran. And I went out and started playing hockey there. I've grown up playing hockey in the city. I was quite excited to get involved playing out in the country. The bunch of these country boys, they're big country boys. I thought, maybe I could show them a thing or two. But I tell you, I got onto that ice. We lived in a small town called Veteran. The rink, I don't know when it was built, maybe in the 50s or 60s, but it was in rough shape. And it wasn't your typical arena like we see in Calgary. I mean, it was like kind of like a barn, all natural ice, right? So there's no coolers, there's no artificial ice going on. It's just when the weather gets cold enough, they start flooding, and it is what it is. When I first stepped on the ice, I felt like I was learning how to skate. I mean, it was a nightmare for me. I would be skating along and all of a sudden catch an edge. I mean, it was such a rough surface. There were like sometimes it didn't get shoveled really cleanly after a day of skating, and so snow would get stuck on there. At times, the weather would warm up and the roof would start leaking, and it'd have these big kind of mounds of new ice that would form on one chunk of it. Sometimes there'd be a big divot in the ice in other places. It was so frustrating. It was not something I had ever really grown up with. I have always been on like perfect ice surfaces, Zamboni, clean. I would find myself going out for a skate with these guys and coming back, sitting on the bench, it's going, this is brutal. Like, how do you guys even do this? Man, I'd just be belly aching about how brutal their ice was. But they were unfazed. These cowboy farmers, they were unreal. They could skate on that ice surface. I don't know if they just knew where all the problem spots were and could dodge it, but they could saucer pass over the trouble spots in the ice. So that puck would land square on the tape of their partner. They would just be skating. They would cut around these potholes. Just, it was like they weren't even the least bit concerned about the surface out there. For me, it felt like a landmine. I could hardly focus on hockey. I was constantly watching where I was skating. But it didn't matter where I went with those guys. We would go out to a dugout, a pond. They would strap on those skates. They would be out there playing like no one's business. I'd be looking around going, man, this is not like, I don't know if this is safe. This isn't comfortable. It's all uneven. Didn't matter to them. They were just ripping. Remember them at one point just looking at me, just going, Jarvis, you're just a typical city kid. I didn't know it at the time what they really meant by that. But city kids in their minds, they were like fragile babies. They had it easy. City kids were those who never knew what it was to struggle, right? They were the whiny complainers who were accustomed to having things done just a certain way. Of course, as I started thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I suppose I kind of qualify. Have you ever found yourself being a bit of a baby? Pouting, refusing to go along with something because, well, you didn't get your own way, or because it wasn't going the way you thought it should or hoped. Yeah, that can be a problem. Hey, the children of Israel were probably some of the biggest city kids in the Bible. like entitled complainers. I mean, at least according to Moses, they were. Moses was trying to lead them out of Egyptian slavery, right? Trying to get them to the promised land that God had waiting for them. And these people just whined and complained the whole time. At one point, they were running low on water. They were saying they were thirsty. They started ripping Moses for not being able to plan more effectively and to give them water. Moses looks to God and says, what do you want me to do with them? God says, take your staff, a big stick, and just strike the rock with it. So Moses does what he says. He takes his staff and he strikes the rock, and water starts gushing out. It was like crisis averted. People are grabbing their pitchers and they're drinking, and all the complaining, all the grumbling stops. Which is great. You'd think that maybe they wouldn't worry so much. Didn't take long before the Israelites found themselves in a place where they were running low on food. Now they start complaining to Moses again. They're going, this is ridiculous. Remember back when we were in Egypt? They start reminiscing. Man, we were sitting around these pots of meat. We could eat all we wanted. Then Moses brought us out here into the desert. Now we're going to starve to death. I can imagine how frustrated Moses would be, these people. But it says that God heard what they're saying. And he says to Moses, he says, I'm going to rain down bread from heaven for you guys. You're going to wake up in the morning and breakfast, lunch, and supper will be served. It's like, really? Yeah, it's called manna. You guys won't be hungry again. You'd think that would have fixed it. No, but it just kept going and going. If you fast forward the story 40 years later, they end up running low on water again. And sure enough, just like clockwork, the belly aching and the complaining begins again. Moses, once again, so angry, so frustrated, he looks to God, the character God in the story, and says, what the heck? What am I supposed to do? So God looks at Moses and says, this time, I want you to do this a little differently. I want you to simply speak to the rock. If you do, it will produce water. But Moses, I think, is so worked up. He's so angry with the people that he just unloads on those complainers. He reads them a riot act. He says, you whiny, complaining people, when are you going to stop being such babies? Then he grabs his staff and he strikes the rock with it. Amazingly, water starts gushing out of the rock. And so the complaining ends, people are grabbing their pitchers and they're drinking, and everyone's happy. Everyone's happy, it seems, but not God. No, God is very upset with Moses. The fact that he didn't do exactly what he had said. He's so upset that he announces to Moses, because you disobeyed me, you and Aaron will never enter the promised land with his people. Now, 40 years in the wilderness, he'd been leading these people, doing everything he can to get them to the promised land. They finally get onto the doorstep. He does this one thing and God's going, you ain't going in. They're going in, you're not. Thinking, what a jerk. I mean, so he struck the rock. It worked, big deal. They got their drink, whatever. But when you read what the Jewish scholars have to say about this story, you begin to see something else going on. Some scholars propose that this is actually a coming of age story for the children of Israel. There's a Jewish saying that when a child is small, his teacher hits him and educates him. But when he grows up, he corrects them with words. It's along this line of thinking that some Jewish scholars think that this story about Moses being asked to speak to the rock is actually acknowledging the fact that the children of Israel were needing to grow up. It was like in the story, the rock is like a parallel of the Hebrew children. 40 years ago, when this rock was young, I told you to strike it. Now, 40 years later, this rock is 40 years older. It needs a different approach. So what are you going to do? You're going to speak to the rock, Moses, and it will produce water. It's interesting, all the scholars work on this story and the way that they expand on it and look at it from different angles. It's been suggested that God is wanting to introduce Moses and the children of Israel to a completely different kind of provision for their community. I mean, up until that point, it's been the God magic show, right? Every time they have a need, it's like they're relying on some miraculous divine intervention for their survival. They need water, comes from the rock. You need food, manna from heaven. If you look at it from the arc of the story, it seems they were entering a new age, a new epoch as a community where the miraculous provision was going away, it was coming to an end. They were going to be required to figure out how to survive on their own in the new land through a more natural means. They needed to get creative. They needed to use their own resources, not God's magic. They needed to figure it out themselves. The Israelites were entering a time in which they would be required to grow up. Now, what's fascinating is when Moses refuses to do what God tells him to do and changing the way, they thought that actually by Moses doing this, striking the rock, he was stunting their growth. He was preventing the new age from happening, where these children of Israel were to grow up. He was actually disempowering them, treating them like babies. And that perhaps was why God told Moses, you ain't going into the promised land. You're not fit to lead these people. These people need to grow up. You know, I sometimes look at things like that ice rink out in Veteran that I struggled to skate on. I think I look at that a lot like I do life. Like life is bumpy, isn't it? Unexpected circumstances and tragedies are happening on the regular. People are letting people down regularly. We're often left at the mercy of a political or an economic decision, whether it's from government, from within our families, from within our workplaces. One stroke of the pen and a position gets changed. One announcement in the media, and all of a sudden a company is downsizing or right sizing, and pink slips are being handed out. Like, life is bumpy. A teenage girl comes home crying, announcing she's pregnant. I mean, there's learning disabilities, there's people struggling with addictions, there's accidents, big and small, that just happen. I would say that a lot of the stuff that happens in life is stuff that we aren't expecting, nor do we know what to do with it to navigate through it when it happens. Rarely does life throw just a straight fastball down the plate, right? Like, so often, they're the looping curveballs that are off speed. You don't half the time see these things coming. And when they come, how we respond, how ready we are to handle them face on, is a question. In this bumpy world, if you become too rigid, if you become too afraid of life happening, or you become too attached to a particular outcome, or unwilling to see things from other people's perspectives, if you live life kind of reacting to it like this city kid did out in the Veteran, life just has a way of leaving you behind, or at least leaving you wanting. there comes a time in life when we're expected to be able to come of age, like the children of Israel, to stop reacting, freaking out, but to begin to accept the inconvenient realities of life, to take responsibility for behaviors and actions, and then creatively figure out another way forward in light of what's going on, to make the most of what is. It's this action of doing that very thing. It's what I might call becoming anti-fragile. Follow me on this if you don't mind. I love this term, anti-fragile. I think it's such a great description of what grown-up spirituality should look like, or at least can look like. I mean, if you think about fragility, you're fragile if you're easily broken or damaged. You're fragile if you're brittle, flimsy, or weak. I mean, I'm reading through this, I'm like, who would want that? Who'd want to live that way? But to be anti-fragile, to be the opposite, to not be easily broken or damaged, to not be brittle or flimsy or weak. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, when one grows in their spirituality, I think it's possible to become so robust and resilient, so adaptable and flexible that it gives you the ability to go anywhere, to be around anyone, not just in the most sterile, perfect situations, but in some of the worst circumstances, and still find a way to live that keeps you present and able to make the most of what is. Now, I don't know about you, but from day one, we've been saying we want that. We don't want to live fragile lives. We don't want to live in this place where we're continually on the edge, hanging on, hoping for some crumbs that are going to be thrown to us, hoping that we can somehow survive whatever cards are dealt to us. No, we want to be able to thrive, no matter what the world throws at us, no matter what conditions we might find ourselves in. As we get ready to turn the page on 2020 and begin in a new year, that's a question that we're asking. We're going, are we leading people to a more anti-fragile posture in life? Can we bring people to a place where they've got more margin, more ability to live in a more robust and resilient way? I think about, I want to be like those country boys who are able to strap on those skates and skate literally anywhere and everywhere, no matter what the ice surface is, and have the time of my life. That's what I want. I don't know all that's involved to get there. I think expectations of life play a big part. You've probably noticed that we've been talking a lot recently about expectations. A few weeks back, I talked about the suffering that having too many expectations of life can cause. How by letting go of your conditions for happiness, just deciding what you're going to allow to steal your happiness, just by deciding, you can actually choose your level of suffering. A lot of that is from expectations. Last week, Vince talked about the unlikelihood of things returning to normal when the pandemic is over. That talk was all simply about the skill of resetting our expectations, creating a level of openness to see life in a different way, through a different lens. So no matter how bumpy that surface may be, no matter how dark the lights are in the rink, we're out skating. Peter Rollins, in his book, The Idolatry of God, he really challenged my expectations of life when he said, Jarvis, you can't be fulfilled. You can't be made whole. You can't find ultimate satisfaction. It's a big statement he came out and made. He's like, human beings are searching for the silver bullet. That's what we do. We're looking for the thing that's going to fix our life, that's going to make everything better. He said, let's get this out of the way. Nothing is going to do that for you. Nothing. Not even your religion. Nothing. And the sooner we can call off the search for the silver bullet that is supposed to fix everything, the sooner we can look at our imperfect lives and see the beauty in them. The sooner we can accept what is, the sooner we can begin figuring out ways to how to dodge the potholes rather than just complaining about them. Expectations are a big thing, but another part of living in an anti-fragile way, another part of that puzzle is our holistic health. Years ago, we began realizing the strong correlation between people's spiritual vitality and their physical, emotional, financial, relational well-being. We had no idea how intricately connected all of these different parts of our lives are. Resilience and becoming anti-fragile is often the result of a lot of personal work that we do. Personal maintenance, keeping up different parts of our lives so that we become resilient as a whole. It's crazy what happens when we don't take care of our physical bodies. We leave them, not maintaining, not strengthening. It's crazy what happens when we refuse to work on relationships that are going sour or broken. It's undeniable what happens when we don't get a good sleep at night or when we don't eat well or when we're not really paying attention to what emotionally recharges us or depletes us and what the level of our emotional battery is at. When you don't pay attention to some of these different things, it's amazing how our resilience begins to drop. Our ability to be able to hang in the middle of difficult things, unexpected life circumstances, and have the capacity to be able to just to make the most of it. This is why, over the next little while, actually next week, we begin a series on self-care called, I think it is, Take Off Your Damn, or no, Put On Your Damn Mask. This is all, the whole series is designed to focus on our self-care, to increase our resilience, to increase our overall capacity to be able to deal with life as it comes in real life, in real time. When we don't do this, it's like strapping 100-pound weights around our ankles. Just begin to hate it. Which is why next week we're going to do that. A number of years ago, we made a number of changes as friends. We started having a lot more adult conversations with our community because we wanted to help you grow up. We talked about doubts and uncertainty and complexity that we didn't have answers for. We still don't. We determined we were going to stop trying to answer everyone's questions. Instead, we just began asking you guys questions. Why? Because behind closed doors, we've often said, we just want this church to become a church for big boys and girls, for adults. We want to grow people up. We want them to be able to thrive no matter where they are. We don't want to pull a Moses that's enabling chronically fragile mentalities in people. We want to challenge you. We call this the spiritual gym for a reason, so that it will set a tone, a culture of development of improving our personal capacity. Why? So that one day, no matter where you end up, no matter what life throws at you, no matter how far you live from Friends Church, whether you can even ever come in person or not, you right where you are will be able to thrive. You know, I don't know how you would score yourself on the anti-fragile scale. I mean, if you think about some of the different things I've talked about today, what kind of mark you'd give yourself. But this year, if you come with us, if you jump on this train, you get involved in this community, and you accept the resilience challenge to take more steps toward growing yourself up spiritually, I can almost guarantee, I can't guarantee, I can almost guarantee your numbers will change. Your resilience factor, your anti-fragile capacity will grow and grow, allowing you to go anywhere, to hang out with anyone, and experience almost anything, and still make the most of what is. That's our prayer for you. As we get ready to head into January 1st, January of 2021, my prayer for you is that no matter how bumpy life gets, you will be a person who in increasing measures lives with an anti-fragile mindset. Yeah, may that be so. Have a great holiday, everyone. We'll see you for the start of the big self-care series next week.